and welcome to the archives. We're back, and I'm going to talk about how to play Netrunner. Before I get into the how to's of playing as a runner or playing as a corp, I'm going to talk about deck building just a little bit. Um, just kind of give an idea as to how things are, how things go. Now, we'll start with the runners. Now, as when you're deck building, you'll buy the core set for Android Netrunner because you need it to play the game. You can build a complete deck right out of that, as far as I'm aware. That hasn't changed. Um, you're not going to need any other data packs or anything like that. You can build your complete set, complete deck out of it. And they say the easiest way to do that, right off the bat, is to take all of the cards from one faction and all of the cards that are neutral and put them together into a deck. I've checked on two of them, one for noise, and it is, as far as I can tell, completely tournament legal as of current because it's not over the influence and you have your minimum of 45 cards. Now, as I showed you on your identities in the last video for how to play, the identity has a minimum deck size. When you're building your deck, you need to have at least that many cards. You can have more, but you need at least that many. 45 is usually the optimal. Some decks have a 40 card minimum, and there's a few that have a 50 card minimum deck size. Your influence rating is, of course, based on how many of other cards from other factions you can include. I'm not going to be delving into that right now. I've kind of explained how influence works. If you have a 15 influence, you can only have cards in your deck that have an influence rating up to 15. Meaning, if you've got, for example, let's see, if you have, for example, the Corroder program, Corroder has 2 influence. So for every Corroder you put in your deck, it's going to cost you 2 of your 15 or 10 or whatever influence, unless another card ability changes that. So you can only have up to your influence rating. There are some cards that are on the most wanted list. So if you're making a deck for a tournament, you're going to want to check the most wanted list. You can find that on Fantasy Flight Games' website under Netrunner for rules. But it will list you certain cards that have been put on the most wanted list. If you include those cards in your deck, they not only cost you the influence rating if they're not in your faction, but they also subtract a certain number. I believe it's 1. They also subtract 1 off your influence for each copy you have. That makes things a little different, but that's super tournament details. We're just talking about basic deck building. Now, there's several things you're going to want in your deck. You're going to want to put all the things in. But what you absolutely need is you're going to need icebreakers to handle the ice you're going to encounter. As I mentioned, there's 3 types of ice. Barrier. Well, there's technically 3. You've got barrier ice, you've got code gate ice, and you've got sentry ice. So you're going to want icebreakers that will handle them, that will allow you to break through those ice. There's also trap ice, which, unless you have an AI installed that can break any, like just break ice subroutines, and it's not a specific type, then those you can't solve. There's certain other types that are called mythic ice, um, that usually will have another subroutine, but there's one that doesn't. And unless you have something in play that can tackle that, then it fires off all the time. Uh, but that's getting ahead of myself. So you're going to want icebreakers in your deck. How much? It all depends on how your play style is. I'm not an expert on play styles. I know there's like different kinds of decks. People call certain corp decks. You've got glacier decks and fast advanced decks, and they're like prison lock decks, and there's all these names and whatnot. I'm not overly familiar with it, but you're going to want some programs in there. This particular one, using just the base core set and all the cards for Anarch, as well as all the neutral cards, that has given me 11 icebreakers. So anything around that is probably a good idea, I'm guessing. This deck also has 47 cards, just to let you know. The minimum is 45. You can have more for runners. You can have more for corp too, but there's a little bit of math you got to do for the corp in that regard. So this has 11 icebreakers in it, but it also has 9 other programs. So it has a total of 20 programs that can be used. The other programs are stuff that doesn't break ice, but helps you in breaking ice in a variety of other ways. As well as noise being noise, he's got virus programs that he's going to want to find. And that's what some of these do, these virus programs that help you. So you've got your programs and your icebreakers. You're going to want those in there. You're also going to want, possibly, hardware. Now, hardware will allow you to do a variety of things. Usually hardware will either give you recurring credits to help pay for stuff, or they'll give you a special ability, like having a console. Now, there's only one console that you can have installed at any time, because pretty much all the consoles are set up that way. Some people only run with like a single console in their deck. Sometimes they run with 3 copies of the console in their deck, and it's up to you how many you want in there. But if you have 3, you've got a better chance of it popping up in your hand when you go fishing for cards. So, beyond the hardware and your icebreakers and programs, the only other cards you have are your event cards and your resource cards. We've covered that in my other video. Now, your event cards will always be cards that you play for a click or maybe for 2, and they will do a thing. Sometimes they will let you fish for cards. Sometimes they let you make a run. Sometimes they give you money or expose cards or do other things. They are cards that sit in your hand until you play them. Resources are cards that you install and they sit in your rig along with your programs and your hardware and your console and whatnot. They sit there and they give you benefits. They might be giving you money. They might be giving you money for clicks or link strength. They might lower the strength of ice. Or they may let you lose a click to get 2 cards every turn. They might. You don't know. It is hard to say. There's dozens, so many cards. But you want to build your deck so that you have several things in it, especially for the runner. You need programs to get past the ice. Unless you've got other ways to get the agendas, you need those programs to get ice. You need your icebreakers. You need cards that give you money because you need to have your economy going. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to pay for using your icebreakers or pay for installing stuff. So you need that. You always need money. You always need programs to break through ice. Those are things you need to keep in mind. Those are your big two. Beyond that, you can have fun and do what you want in building your deck. As I said, you need to have your 45 cards, at least. With a runner, you can have as many cards as you want. The more cards you get, the less of a chance you're going to get things to come up. Usually, most people tend to go between 45 and 49 cards for a runner deck. Usually. For some runners, it starts lower for 40 or higher for 50, but those are those ones. So you always got to keep your eyes on stuff when you're building. Beyond that, I don't have too much to say in terms of deck building for runners, because anyone who's played a deck building game, you're only going to know by getting in there and doing it and realizing that you can't have all the things and have to start cutting things. So keep an eye out for that. Now let's have a look at the Corp cards. I've put together the base deck for Jinteki, because I love Jinteki, based off of the core set. And it has given us 49 cards. 45 card minimum, 49 cards. The thing with Jinteki, however, or with the Corp, is that for a 45 card deck, you need to have between 20 and 21 agenda points. So however many cards you have, however many points, agenda points those cards are worth, you add those points up until you get between 20 and 21. This deck has 21. It has 9 agendas. If you put one more card in and make it 50, if you make it 50 cards, then between 50 and 54, you need to have, I believe it's 21 to 22 agenda points. It goes up by points the more cards you're adding into it. So you always have to have a certain percentage or a certain point tally of agenda points in a deck to make it. That way you can't just make a deck and have like no agendas in it, because then it's unfair to the runner. They can't run and get agendas. So you need to have that certain amount of points. That doesn't mean you can't finagle it and have a whole bunch of high point agendas to make less cards, less agendas in your deck. That's perfectly legal. But you need to have that certain amount. The exact amount, again, is in the rules. I'm not going to go into how many points it is, all for every single amount of cards. It goes up, I believe, logarithmically. Possibly. Or it could be linearly. I don't know. But beyond that, you got your agendas. So that's good. You're going to want your economy cards as well. You need cards that give you money. Because you need to be able to pay for everything as well. That's the same between runners and corps. Beyond that, there are usually the corp gets money from operations, which are like events just for the corp. They're cards that sit in hand until you play them. They'll get money from operations or from their assets, which they can install. And they have to install them, res them, and have them work for them. Beyond that, there's also upgrades. Now, when it comes to installing things in a server, because you have to install agendas in a server as well, you can install a... Well, what am I talking about? I'll get into that when I'm talking about actually playing the game. I'm just talking about what we've got here. So you've got assets that can give you money or be ambushes or do stuff for you, prevent cards from being exposed. You've got upgrades, which can help you in a variety of ways. They're usually installed in a server and tend to affect only that server, but not always. You've got your operations that can give you money or do things to the runner or do things for you. And then you've got ice. And you're going to need ice, because ice lets you protect your agendas, help you protect your servers. You build out your ice, You have to res it, so it's going to cost money to res, hence why you need an economy. So you get all these ice peoples out. There's barrier ice, code gate ice, sentry ice, and then we've got a trap ice, which is for Jinteki, a data mine. It does a net damage, and then it trashes itself. So it basically explodes when the runner hits it. So you've got the ice that you need to put out. You've got your agendas that you need to have. And like I said, minimum 45 cards. The influence is the same. It works the same as for the corpse as the runner. You just find out what you do. Until you get the hang of it, until you know what you're doing, as I say, if you're going to be building your decks, if you've never played Netrunner, put together a base deck based just off the core cards and go nuts that way. Find out, play some games, find out how all the things work, all your programs, all your ice, your economy, find out how the game works that way, and then get to actually seriously deck building. So, that's going to be it for this episode. Thank you all so much for watching. As always, if you like what I'm doing, please give that like button a tap. Give that subscribe button a tap as well if you haven't already. And ring the notification bell. I guess that helps. And throw a comment in the comment section. What do you think of Netrunner? Do you have any tips for deck building that you think people might be interested in? Throw a comment in that comment section. I'd love to get a discussion going with some people. And until next time, my friends, remember, keep running.